Hello everyone and welcome back to Speak Fluent with Armeen, the podcast where we dive deep into conversational English, idioms, expressions, and tips to help you sound natural in English. I'm your host Armeen, and with me is my co-host Donald. How are you doing, Donald?
I'm doing great, Armin. Excited to be here, as always. And I think today's topic is one that a lot of our listeners will find incredibly useful. We're talking about something nearly everyone wants but often struggles with: achieving fluency in English.
Exactly. I think a lot of people dream about being fluent, but when it comes down to it, they might not know how to approach it. So today, we are going to break down a practical guide with clear steps that anyone can follow to improve their fluency.
And we're not just listing tips here, right? We're actually going to dive into each method, talk about why it works, and how you can apply it in a real-world setting.
That's right, Donald. We're going to be looking at everything from setting achievable goals, building a daily practice routine, to fun ways to immerse yourself in English without feeling like you're studying. So, if you've been wondering how to really make progress with your English, this episode is for you.
Exactly. By the end of today's episode, we hope our listeners walk away feeling confident that fluency is possible with the right strategies and persistence. So, Armin, why don't we jump right into the first point?
Let's do it. Alright everyone, let's get into the essentials of achieving English fluency. Grab a pen and paper if you want to take notes, and let's get started.
Speaking fluent English is a realistic goal for people from all walks of life, and with the right methods, dedication, and mindset, anyone can achieve it. Here's a comprehensive guide covering practical ways to reach fluency, including in-depth strategies, tools, and tips. 1. Set clear, achievable goals. Define fluency for you. Everyone has a different understanding of what fluency means. For some, it might mean conversing comfortably with native speakers, while for others, it may mean understanding complex texts or conducting business meetings in English. Identify what fluency means for you to tailor your learning journey. Break down your goals. Instead of a vague objective like be fluent, break it down. For example, start with, I want to hold a 5-minute conversation with a native speaker, or I want to watch a movie without subtitles. These specific goals will keep you motivated and give you measurable progress.
Alright, so let's dive into the first part. I love how this guide starts by saying that fluency is a realistic goal for everyone, regardless of background. And I think that's important because often people feel discouraged thinking that English fluency is something only a select few can achieve. But with the right approach, it really is possible for everyone.
Exactly, Armin. And I think what stands out here is the idea of clear, achievable goals. Many learners just say, I want to be fluent, but they haven't defined what that actually looks like for them. Setting specific personal goals is really the first step in reaching fluency because it gives you a sense of direction and purpose.
Right, and I would add that defining what fluency means to you is key. One person's goal might be to understand academic lectures, while another just wants to have smooth conversations while traveling. Those are two very different goals, and recognizing what your definition of fluency is can shape your study methods and focus areas.
Absolutely. And the advice here about breaking down goals into smaller, measurable steps is something we always encourage. When you say, I want to hold a 5-minute conversation with a native speaker, that's a tangible, specific goal. It's also something you can work toward daily, whether by practicing vocabulary, working on listening comprehension, or even rehearsing conversation starters.
That's a great point, Donald. It makes the path to fluency feel much less overwhelming. Rather than focusing on some abstract end goal, you're constantly achieving these little wins. And those little wins build confidence, which is so important in language learning.
Yes, and confidence plays a huge role. When learners can see measurable progress, it boosts their motivation. Plus, reaching one of these smaller goals often means you're actually using the language in real situations, which is where the true learning happens.
Exactly, and that's why I think this approach is powerful. It's practical. It doesn't rely on memorizing huge lists of words or getting every grammar rule perfect. It's about developing skills that help you communicate step by step. And speaking of steps, should we continue with the next one in the guide?
Absolutely. Let's keep it going and move on to the next section of this guide.
2. Build a daily practice routine. Consistency over intensity. Aim for at least 20 to 30 minutes of English practice every day. Consistent exposure and use of the language are more beneficial than cramming. Daily journaling. Start a daily journal in English. Write down thoughts, summaries of your day, or anything on your mind. This exercise reinforces sentence structure, vocabulary, and helps with organizing thoughts in English. Set milestones and celebrate progress. Make learning rewarding by acknowledging when you hit a milestone, such as having a successful conversation or understanding a news article. Small celebrations keep you motivated.
Alright, building a daily practice routine. This is such an essential step for everyone aiming to achieve fluency. Donald, what do you think about the emphasis of consistency over intensity?
I love this point, Armin. The idea that 20 to 30 minutes every day can be more effective than longer, infrequent study sessions is crucial. This speaks to a fundamental principle in language acquisition. Regular exposure is key. When learners engage with the language daily, they build habits that make language learning feel more natural.
Exactly. It's like exercising. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon by cramming a month of training into one weekend, right? The same applies to language learning. The brain thrives on routine and repetition.
That's a great analogy. And moving on to the idea of daily journaling, this is a powerful practice. Not only does it help in reinforcing vocabulary and sentence structure, but it also gives learners a chance to express their thoughts in English. It's a safe space to experiment with new words and phrases without the fear of making mistakes.
Absolutely. And writing helps with organizing thoughts, which is so important for speaking fluently. When you journal, you start to see patterns in how you form sentences. This clarity can transfer over to speaking as well.
And let's not forget the psychological aspect of it. Keeping a journal can be incredibly motivating. Seeing your progress written down can boost confidence. It's tangible evidence of your growth.
Speaking of growth, the idea of setting milestones is brilliant. Celebrating small victories is crucial for motivation. It helps learners recognize that progress is happening, even if it feels slow sometimes.
Exactly. Celebrating those milestones can be as simple as treating yourself to something enjoyable when you complete a task, like finishing a book in English or having a conversation without reverting to your native language.
Right. It's important to find what works for you and what motivates you personally. Everyone's milestones will look different, but they are all valid. Okay, I think we've covered this section pretty thoroughly.
I agree. Now, let's continue the podcast and move on to the next practical tip for achieving English fluency.
3. Engage with native and advanced non-native speakers. Language exchange programs. Platforms like Tandem, HelloTalk, or language cafes in your area can pair you with native speakers or advanced learners. These exchanges create opportunities for casual, real-world conversations and help you develop a natural flow. Join online communities. Engage in online communities such as English learning subreddits or Facebook groups. These communities offer a wealth of resources, support, and a place to ask questions. Participate in group discussions. Joining discussion groups on specific topics, e.g., travel, food, or politics, helps you engage in dialogues on familiar subjects. This setting makes it easier to express thoughts and pick up vocabulary related to the topics you care about.
Engaging with native and advanced non-native speakers. I think this is one of the most dynamic aspects of learning a language. Donald, what do you think about the role of language exchange programs?
Absolutely, Armin. Language exchange programs can be a game changer for learners. Platforms like Tandem and HelloTalk are not just about finding someone to practice with. They create a space for real conversations. This interaction allows learners to experience language in context, which is crucial for fluency.
Right. The informal nature of these exchanges is important. When you're chatting with a native speaker, you're not just practicing grammar. You're also picking up on idioms, slang, and pronunciation nuances that you wouldn't necessarily get from a textbook.
Exactly. And let's not forget the cultural aspect. Engaging with someone from a different background can provide insights into how language is used in daily life, which can enrich your understanding. It helps learners see the practical application of what they've studied.
That's a good point, Donald. Plus, it's a confidence booster. Speaking with someone else, especially a native speaker, can be intimidating at first, but it really helps you push past those initial fears and barriers.
Yes, and I think another valuable resource mentioned was joining online communities. Platforms like Reddit or Facebook groups provide a space for learners to interact, ask questions, and share experiences. What's your take on this, Armin?
I love the idea of community support. It's so helpful to have a place where you can connect with others who are going through similar struggles. You can find encouragement and tips from those who have faced similar challenges. Plus, it's a great way to stay motivated.
For sure, and participating in group discussions on specific topics really taps into that. When learners engage in conversations about things they are passionate about, like travel or food, they're more likely to stay engaged and remember new vocabulary and phrases.
Absolutely, it's all about making the learning process enjoyable and relevant. When you talk about something that excites you, you are more likely to express yourself naturally. It can also help with fluency, as you practice speaking more fluently about familiar subjects.
So, to summarize this section, engaging with native and advanced speakers not only enhances language skills, but also builds confidence and cultural understanding. This method is all about real-world practice, and it's such a crucial component of achieving fluency.
Exactly, and I think that's a fantastic segue into our next point. So, let's continue the podcast and explore more strategies for achieving fluency in English.
4. Immerse yourself in English content. Switch your digital life to English. Set your devices, apps, and social media language to English. This simple change exposes you to common vocabulary and phrases in daily use. Listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos. Engage with English content that matches your interests and proficiency level. Podcasts like Speak Fluent with Armin, hosted by Armin and Donald, provide valuable conversational English tips, while others like TED Talks can expose you to a variety of accents and topics. Watch TV shows and movies in English. Shows and movies offer a variety of vocabulary, idioms, and slang. Start with subtitles in your native language, then transition to English subtitles, and eventually try to watch without them. Try pausing to mimic dialogues, which improves pronunciation and rhythm.
Okay, immerse yourself in English content. This is such an important aspect of language learning, and it is something we can all relate to. Isn't it, Donald?
Absolutely, Armin. Immersion is key. When learners switch their digital lives to English, by changing the language settings on their devices, apps, and social media, it really opens up a world of English vocabulary and phrases that they encounter daily.
Right, it's like surrounding yourself with the language. I often tell my students that the more they expose themselves in English, the more natural it becomes. It's all about getting comfortable with the language in various contexts.
Exactly. And moving on to the second point, listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos is a fantastic way to engage with English content that interests you. For instance, our podcast serves as an example, but there's a wealth of resources out there, like TED Talks, which present a variety of speakers and topics.
That's a great point. TED Talks are particularly useful because they not only provide a range of accents, but also introduce a specialized vocabulary related to diverse subjects. Listeners can pick topics that fascinate them, which makes the learning process more enjoyable.
And let's not forget about the importance of watching TV shows and movies. They're rich in conversational language, idioms, and cultural references. Starting with subtitles in your native language can help bridge the understanding gap. Then transitioning to English subtitles gives learners a chance to see the written language while hearing it spoken.
Exactly. And then the ultimate goal is to watch without any subtitles at all. It's a great way to really challenge your listening skills. Plus, mimicking dialogues is an effective technique for improving pronunciation and mastering the natural rhythm of the language.
I couldn't agree more, Armin. It's like practicing with a live audience. Learners can pick up on nuances and inflections in the language, which are often missed in written form. This dynamic exposure to the language can be a game changer.
And I think it's crucial to emphasize that immersion should feel enjoyable, not like a chore. The more you engage with content you love, the more likely you are to stick with it.
Exactly. So, shall we continue with the next point in our guide? I'm eager to see what strategies we'll uncover next.
Let's dive in.
5. Expand your vocabulary. Learn words in context. Memorizing lists is inefficient. Instead, learn words as they appear in sentences or in specific situations. For example, learn phrases like break the ice in context to better understand when and how to use them. Use flashcard apps with spaced repetition. Apps like Anki or Quizlet use spaced repetition to help you remember vocabulary more effectively. Review words daily to reinforce memory. Focus on core vocabulary and high-frequency phrases. Some words and expressions are used far more often than others. Knowing these words will allow you to express yourself in most situations, even if your vocabulary isn't vast. Resources like the General Service List, GSL, focus on high-frequency vocabulary.
Alright, the next one is expanding your vocabulary. This is such an essential aspect of becoming fluent in any language, including English.
Absolutely, Armin. The first strategy here is learning words in context, which I think is crucial. When learners memorize vocabulary lists without context, they often struggle to apply those words correctly in conversation. Learning phrases like break the ice in context not only helps with understanding but also enhances retention.
Right. When learners see or hear a word used in a sentence, they can grasp its meaning and nuances much better. It's about understanding how words interact with each other in natural speech. This method makes vocabulary more relatable and easier to recall when it's time to use it.
And let's not forget about the power of flashcard apps. Tools like Anki and Quizlet have revolutionized the way we learn vocabulary. The concept of spaced repetition is fantastic because it helps us review words just as we are about to forget them, reinforcing our memory in a more efficient way.
Exactly. It's a game changer. By regularly reviewing flashcards, learners can build a solid foundation of vocabulary over time. And I always recommend setting aside a few minutes each day for this practice. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Even just 10 to 15 minutes can make a difference.
That's a great point. Consistency is key here. Now, the last part of this section talks about focusing on core vocabulary and high-frequency phrases. This approach is often overlooked but incredibly effective. By prioritizing the most commonly used words and expressions, learners can communicate effectively without needing an extensive vocabulary.
Definitely. The General Service List is an excellent resource for this. It highlights the most frequently used words in English, which can give learners a great starting point. Knowing these words allows them to express their thoughts clearly in everyday conversations.
And it reduces the anxiety that comes with trying to use less common vocabulary that might not even be relevant in everyday situations. It's about practicality, right? Mastering these high-frequency phrases can lead to more fluent and confident conversations.
Absolutely, Donald. In summary, by learning vocabulary in context, utilizing flashcard apps for spaced repetition, and focusing on core vocabulary, learners can significantly enhance their language skills.
That's a solid recap, Armin. Now, let's continue the podcast and explore the next part of our practical guide to achieving English fluency.
Six, practice speaking and pronunciation. Speak out loud daily. Even if you're alone, speak English out loud. Reading articles, narrating your thoughts, or repeating lines from TV shows helps you get comfortable with speaking. Mimic native pronunciation. Listen to native speakers and try to mimic their pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. Resources like Youglish allow you to hear specific words in context from native speakers across various accents. Shadowing technique. Shadowing involves listening to someone speak in English and repeating what they say almost simultaneously. It's a powerful way to improve pronunciation and get used to natural speech patterns.
Alright, let's take a moment to analyze the section on practicing speaking and pronunciation. This is such a crucial area for learners, isn't it, Donald?
Absolutely, Armin. The emphasis on speaking out loud daily is particularly important. Many learners underestimate the power of just vocalizing what they've learned. When you speak out loud, you engage different cognitive processes that help reinforce memory and muscle memory for pronunciation.
Exactly. Speaking loud is like any other muscle. If you don't use it, it won't get stronger. Plus, when learners narrate their thoughts or read articles out loud, they are also practicing fluency. It helps them get comfortable with the flow of the language.
That's a great point. And then we have the recommendation to mimic native pronunciation. This technique is so effective because it allows learners to not only hear the correct pronunciation, but also internalize the rhythm and intonation of natural speech. It's about more than just the words. It's about how those words are delivered.
Right, and resources like Youglish can really enhance this practice. They provide real-life examples of how words are used in context, which helps learners understand pronunciation variations and different accents. It's a fantastic way to expose yourself to authentic language use.
And let's not overlook the shadowing technique. It's one of the most effective methods for improving both pronunciation and fluency. By repeating what someone else is saying almost simultaneously, learners develop an ear for the language. They start to recognize patterns in speech, which is crucial for sounding more natural.
Indeed, shadowing helps with everything from improving accent to understanding stress patterns in words and sentences. It really trains the brain to pick up on nuances that can make a significant difference in communication.
So, in summary, this section really underscores the importance of active engagement with the language. Speaking out loud, mimicking, and shadowing are all practical, actionable strategies that can lead to significant improvements in fluency.
Absolutely. These strategies demystify the speaking process and make it more approachable for learners. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you found our discussion on practicing speaking and pronunciation helpful and inspiring as you work toward fluency.
Definitely. Remember, these practical strategies are just the beginning. There's so much more to explore when it comes to achieving fluency in English.
Exactly. We've covered some key points today, but there are still 6 more practical tips waiting for you. Each of these will help you build a more robust foundation in English and become more confident in your speaking abilities.
So, if you enjoyed today's episode and want to learn more, make sure to subscribe to Speak Fluent with Armin. You won't want to miss our next episode, where we'll continue this journey and provide you with more valuable insights.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate your support and are excited to share more tips and techniques with you next time. Until then, keep practicing, stay curious, and remember that fluency is within your reach.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.